In this strange world of continuous uncertainty, you and your business are quickly forgotten by customers and influencers as they go about their own busy schedules. Maintaining a constant visibility and implementing a sound communication strategy is, in my mind, essential not just to survival, but for solid business growth. And that's where PR comes into its own. But it has to be sound and solid PR focused on measurable results. So that's why today I'm delighted to be virtually visiting the Managing Director of Oggadoon PR, Caroline Macdonald. Hello, Caroline. Welcome to Meet the Leader.
Hi. Hi, Malcolm. Thanks so much for that introduction and the challenge therein.
Right. Yeah, well, the first challenge is, Caroline, before I start my main questions, I know some PR companies like to think they're creative and everything, and especially in their titling, but why Oggadoon?
Well, I'd like to say that there was a major epic journey that we went on to get to the name, but quite simply, it's a bit of Scottish gibberish that myself and my husband came up with. We term it Jockanese as a different language, and in terms of what do you call your business, I just opted for that because I didn't want it to be my name particularly, and I didn't want to spend ages trying to find the one. So I was like, that'll do.
I've got to say to you, it's memorable. I like it. I really like it.
Thank you.
PR's, I sometimes have problems spelling it, but I really like it. PR is a congested market. So what makes Oggadoon different? Is it your guerrilla approach?
It can often be seen to be a congested market, but in actual fact, I don't think that it necessarily is. It's just whether you've got the good, the bad, or the indifferent, really. It's an important part of everyday business if you want to grow and succeed. I suspect that where that we are different to the marketplace is very much that guerrilla approach, where we are very pervasive as well as persuasive in our approach. And for us, it's not just looking at one element of PR, it's looking at all elements that are either right for that customer or right for that client's customers, so where they are in that way. So that's where we differentiate. Plus also we don't have that box that we shove everybody into. It really is tailored according to needs, because everybody is very diverse and very dynamic.
Excellent, yeah. Now, I think, PR is a much maligned profession, and I believe it is a profession, by the way. Can it really influence a market or deliver results for a company on its own without, say, advertising support?
So it depends on what elements you want to look at within PR. My fundamental backstop is, if you're in business, you usually want to survive. Yeah. Number one, i.e. you want to have revenue coming in or investment or grants. If you don't communicate, how do people know that you are there? Particularly now that we are in a much more digitized virtual world. So if you don't have PR, whether that is advertising, content, coverage, keywords, digital things coming in, inbounds coming in, how do people know that you're there? How can you sell in that way? Now, obviously, if you look at PR on the aspect in the political world, then it's a very different scenario. But if you're looking in the business world, it is fundamental to your business success.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the three big mistakes, do you think, that companies make about using PR?
First one, you're going to get an instant result. No, that's not going to happen. Yeah. PR is about, PR is public relations. So you need to look at the relationship. So that's really quite key for it. Second one is, we only have to do it once. Again, I come back to the fact that this is about building momentum. You're building that relationship, not just with the people that can help send that message out, but very much with your audiences, who are either your direct customers, your direct consumers, or your influencers or advocates in that way. And thirdly, it has to be expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be effective.
I learned at an early stage from the newspapers I worked for that PR is worth 7 times the value of advertising. But getting it placed, of course, is the challenge. Otherwise, the journalist is going to say, send it off to advertising. So if you were to dissect a good PR piece or release that would catch the media or journalist's attention, what would it flow like?
So there's a couple of things before you look at the flow. One is understand that editor or that journalist or that reporter. How busy are they? What are their issues? On average, they are getting 700 pictures a day. I suspect that's gone up in recent times. So just think of it from their perspective. The second thing is, why should their readers care to hear about it? So that's the answer that they're looking for, and that's why they'll go for something, or they'll pull it, or they won't even respond. So you need to get through those two things first of all. Then you need to look at the flow. The flow quite clearly needs to have a catchy headline. It cannot be sales. It has to be informative, and it has to have hooks. So you have to have a catchy headline. You have to, within your first paragraph, have the reasons why anybody would be interested in reading the rest of the article. And then the rest of the article can come in. If you can have it validated with facts or stats from a third party or source, so it's not just you talking about something. If it's going in on a particular topic that's quite key at the moment, or campaign that they've been working on, you can look at all those other aspects, and if you can have other endorsements throughout. But those four things are the main things that you want to address, just to get through the noise, to get through their inbox effectively.
Excellent, yeah. So at Oggadoon, have you seen changes in the way that you are targeting media for your clients? For example, a move away from the old, what was called spray and pray, to niche media, such as this podcast, for example?
Yeah, I would say that it absolutely has. The old spraying around isn't there anymore, largely because the number of journalists is shrinking in terms of who are actually tied to a particular title. There's a bigger swell of freelancers who will write for a number of titles, so that publication doesn't have that person on their books effectively. Yeah. There's also very much more the development of niche elements, whether that's niche in the type of sector for it, or whether it's niche in the type of discipline such as yourself, or whether it's niche in terms of the format. And this is all about, again, being very personalised with it all. Journalists don't like that round robin press push out. They just feel that's lazy. Obviously, from our perspective, is that, well, we do all this personalisation, you don't always pick up on it, so it comes both ways. But there's very much more about that personal interaction in that way, and you being really focused on stuff. And so many people I know say, right, I want to be in tier one, so that's either the tier one in the UK nationals, or the tier one internationally. And you say, oh, your audience say, why would you want to be in those? So we sometimes have to bring them back to, actually, your audience is in a different place. Yeah. How they consume media is also different. So if you're going for something that's in the tier one, let's say, what about your social? What about your PR as well? Because you can then cut through to it, and you can then just balance it up in that way. So things have changed. It's very interesting. And I think what this does is help get less of the editorial spin necessary coming in, and gets direct to people for them to make a decision or a judgment, or to assimilate that information directly for themselves.
Yeah, I've been sort of saying that mass media is vanity, targeted is sanity, but results are king. So how do you demonstrate the return on investment on PR in an effective way that's client beneficial?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Because the whole thing about PR, why it's so much derided, it's not linear. You can't say, right, that article is going to give me those results. It just simply doesn't happen in that way, because we are human beings. We act in different ways to how we receive information in it. So it's a continual issue for the PR industry to show metrics. We do show metrics in lots of different ways, particularly through what that publication has, and through the click-through rate and other analytical tools that we have to hand. But what I also use is, and it's something that you can't measure, is when you're with the CEO or the founder or whoever's the key person within the organisation, if you can grab that anecdotal evidence, which is, and I had this from the senior person who was quite tough, because he's an engineer by trade, so really PR and engineering don't really
Yeah.
go. But he just turned around to me after 6 months and said, Caroline, I don't know what it is, but I just feel our brand is everywhere. And I said, I'll take that feel and I'll interpret that into analytics for you, and I can show you what that return is. So I gave him some sort of figure. So you do quantify it with the metrics that you've got to hand, but you've also got this other bit, which is either people feeling it or people are coming back to them, they're hearing about them, which is not easy to quantify, but you have to hold on to that anecdotal evidence and demonstrate it in that way. And then I always come back to the thing of it's a fundamental bit of business.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more that you need to achieve today: social value, community spirit, and so on. And that brings that warm feeling back. And if employees are happy with it and they're seeing the company name around and they're thinking, I work for them, and suppliers are saying, I supply them, customers say I buy from them, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
it's very, very much about the brand pooling out in that way. So the halo effect of it, and that's what great PR and digital content can do. Yeah.
So let's just focus one little question there, that I feel that a lot of supposed professional PR, I say supposed, is puffy and bloated press releases. But it really needs to be persuasive communication. So how do you guide clients away from their natural desire to write an issue, an advertising piece?
So we have to bring them back to what is the purpose here? Mm-hmm. What is the point of what we're doing?
Yeah.
And that relates back to what are your business objectives? What are you trying to achieve? But it very much relates back to the marketplace that you're trying to achieve them in.
Yeah.
And we really have to go back to that, because we say, look, we can take a budget and we can do X, Y, and Z, but is it going to deliver you the results? Bear in mind that there's no guarantee on stuff in that sense. So we have to take them back there and just say, how do you want the marketplace to feel about you? How do you want that to occur? What level of advocacy do you want? What level of referrals do you want? How are you calculating lifetime value of acquiring that customer? And at that point, it then comes back to, well, it's this sort of approach that we want, which might just be PR. It might be PR and digital marketing. It could be there's advertising comes into it. But, in terms of, the advertising, you have to follow that up with other stuff to make people feel why they should choose you above anybody else in that way. And that comes back to the persuasion. And that's what's come back to what we do, which is pervasive comms, where people just start to see stuff quite a lot and get more convinced about, that they should enter into some sort of conversation or interaction with that brand.
Yeah, I mean, it is known that you take 7 to 12 connections of a brand name before you actually start to have any awareness, isn't it? It's the same in selling. Yeah. Okay.
It's quite strong in that way.
Yeah. So what's the benefit of choosing a local PR firm as opposed to, say, a global one?
So I would suggest that it's not necessarily local as opposed to size or boutique. What you get with either local or a smaller fit is a real personalization and a real agileness and flexibility to be able to deliver. What you can get when you go to global is, yes, you might be able to get that global reach if that's what you're after. But my witness of global businesses is that you're also buying into a level of mediocrity, because as a global business, you can't be on point all the time. It just simply doesn't happen. So you have to hope that you are in with a part of that business that is really on it,
Right. Yeah.
And quite often you can then be changed between people who are looking after you. And the often quoted thing that I get back at me is, if you're a really big business, so you're one of their heavy account spending a few $100,000 per annum, whether that's dollars or pounds, then they get treated that way. But if you're slightly smaller, you tend to get the smaller bits from it, and the inconsistency. What we're seeing now, this is something that we have, or I have certainly been there in Time to Drive, is developing an ecosystem. So yes, we might be on the smaller side. That means that we know what we do, but we also know what we don't do. So we've been developing an ecosystem of what's called interdependent, independent
Wow.
businesses. So
Right.
we will then work with others who can perhaps bring that video content
Yeah.
to what's needed, excuse me, or something else, so that that full size service that a global business can do, we can do, but through the network. It's similar to the fact that we have relationships with smaller PR agencies in the States if we really need that boost, and over in the Middle East as well.
Do all clients have a PR story worth telling them?
Well, that's up to our job to find out. Usually, yes. I've yet to find one that I haven't been able to find that creative, that excitement, that hook in some way. Some of them are very far away from the creative angle. They're very tech or engineering, and they get very excited in that way. And we can find that something that means that there's a really good story to tell, that's usually backed by evidence, by discovery, by vision in that way. So it is unusual not to find that. You can have those who are just very, very much out for the money, that sort of central element is very hard to find in that way. But I haven't yet come across one where we've said, oh, I can't find the story for you, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
Because there's usually a good reason why they're in business.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Now, I spend quite a lot of time helping people win contracts, tenders and contracts. And I'm a firm believer that those that win the contracts, they've already been doing some influencing. They have an awareness already. So can PR influence a sale or a contract is my sort of question to you and thinking, because I do believe that if a buyer has an impression of a business, that's better than them having no knowledge at all of that company. And PR can achieve it, can it?
It can contribute and help to it.
Yeah.
What has risen of late is what we call the Google check. So you might be bidding for a bit of business. You might have had that personal relationship. You might not have done it. It might be a spec thing. What the Google check is that whoever it is that's hearing about you or you've submitted them for, they're going to go online and check you out.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So you need to sign up to Google check, and journalists do the same as well. So if you're pitching into a journalist about somebody, they go, right, I'm going to see what they like online, see if the evidence is there to back up. So yes, it does help. The Google check really helps you where the digital PR is really important for how you are online, what you're talking about, your expertise, all that sort of thing. It also helps when people are in that pitch situation, and the tenders are pretty much like for like in terms of price, approach, methodology.
Yeah.
And you want to get that warm feeling, because ultimately people are contracting with people. Okay, it's through the vehicles of businesses or through organisations, but it's people to people, and they want to develop that trust and that reassurance that they're going for the right partner in that way. Again, PR can help with that. Also, in the sense of not overblowing the PR as well, so not being too sycophantic in that way. Yeah. But also, if you've had, let's be honest, if you've had an issue, how you've dealt with that as well is really important. So these things do happen, and they happen much more than any of us could actually quantify in that way. So, how people perceive how you are as an individual, as part of that business, really is the impact of PR in that way.
Yeah, so important. And we interview lots of buyers around the world, and that message is coming through strong. So my experience is that good PR firms like yourself offer more than press release services. So what should a potential client look for when selecting a PR firm?
There's a number of things. One is, before they go into that selection process, they need to be clear about what they want in terms of what the whole exercise should achieve when you engage with somebody. So, what the business objectives are, how you want to increase customers, customer experience, whatever that might be. You also want to look to see whether you are just being slotted into, this is our process, that's what we do, chunk, 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 chunk. That's what you get at the end of it.
Right, yeah.
In that way.
Yeah, chunk, chunk,
it's also looking for, do they really understand where you are in the marketplace and the challenges that you've got and what's keeping you awake at night?
Yeah.
How are they actually looking to to address those. Quite often when we're in situations, we say, well, what do I get for money? How many press releases? How many this, that, and the other? And we can supply that, but actually, this is about the end game. It's about increasing your reach. It's about getting out to your customers. And this might mean lots of all these things, or a little bit of a couple of things, you know, which could be press releases, could be digital content, could be hidden PR, could be, looking at more of the developed stuff with podcasts, with webinars, you know, with could be more on the customer comms. Who knows what it might be, but seeing how adaptable they are and how much they understand where you need to go and your marketplace in that way, so that you're not part of just a system that they've created and you just put in and then, you know, you get what you get.
Excellent.
At the end of it. And then there's also the rapport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important. You get on with them. You've got a brilliant team. Yeah. We've met a couple like Claire and everything. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. So that's enough about Oggadoon. But I've got you here, and it's the Meet the Leader show. So now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions direct. You were a successful woman leader in a challenging business sector. What's been your biggest personal challenges that you've overcome?
I think most of the personal challenges I didn't realise were challenges, genuinely, right. You know, because I've been quite, I suppose, bloody minded at times. I mean, clearly, on the one hand, the challenges are I'm a woman, I'm a mother, and, you know, having family is just hard work.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
So there's that. I must say that. I think that the other challenges I've had, I don't feel that I've received many challenges because I'm a female in business. I guess I think there have been times when I've been dismissed a little bit more or something like that, but it's really changed over the time that I've been running my own business, thankfully. I think the biggest challenge I've had personally is to value myself and what the team does, and, you know, getting a team and being confident that, yes, that invoice should be that amount, or that proposal should be that amount. Yeah. And I think that comes through the fact that generally women have emotive elements to the way that we are. And when you're male, you don't have that. You know that you deserve that recognition in the form of that revenue coming in. So that's taking a bit of time to get through. But I don't feel that I've had lots of challenges in that way. You know, if I have been knocked down in a way, I've just got up and carried on, really.
Resilient Caroline, yeah. And look, I love your side story about the clan Macdonald, you know. I'm sitting with that Gallagher kilt on. No, I'm not. How important is that? How important is that? How important is that heritage to you personally? And does it contribute to your business culture, you know, the tribal bit?
So obviously I've married into the clan, but I do have a lot of Scottish heritage as well myself, and it's been very interesting to go into the history of the clan Macdonald. It's from the Isle of Skye. We've got our own shield, as it were, and it's per mare, by land, by sea, in that way. So it feels very strong to be connected in that way through the history, I suppose, and that then gives you that grounding, which I try to bring into the business. I don't always succeed. I admit that. Partly because I'm expecting and I've got standards in that way, but I do try to make sure that, you know, my team know that they're with me. They know that I've got their back. They know that I'm looking after them, and they know very much that I see their potential. I want them to excel, however they can excel in that way. Because the clan aspect of it is that, you know, you look after your own and you look to improve and, you know, support those that might have weaker areas in that way, but also to be massively proud of what you do and what you deliver. And that's what I encourage the team to do, is to look back on what we actually achieve for our clients and for the projects that we work on.
Brilliant, yeah. So finally, it's 3 wishes time. I haven't got my fairy wand, but you have 3 wishes to change the perception of the value of PR by business leaders. What are your 3 wishes?
So the first one is that, as I said at the start, for any business to be successful, it needs to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
End of. You could have had the most amazing product. If you don't communicate about it, you're not going to sell any of it or service. So that is fundamental when you're looking at your business. It's fundamental. Number two, your brand is usually an asset on your balance sheet and very much valued if you're doing an exit strategy, if you're looking for investment, or for some other sort of partnership. That brand asset really does come down to an awful lot of PR and comms and marketing for it. So you should value PR and comms in that way. Third one is, if times get tough, the revenue isn't coming in, don't sack your PR and marketing, sack your finance team or your accountants, because they haven't planned it enough for you so that you are resilient in that way. It's really important when times are going tough that you maintain your brand integrity and you maintain your comms and marketing, because otherwise people will make their own decisions. And I think this current period has shown that, that you need to be strong, and you need to plan for when any sort of crisis may occur. It's like having that insurance policy that you don't actually need to use. If you plan for it, you won't need to use for it. But it's absolutely vital to the survivability of your business, and then the fact that it should thrive.
Excellent. That's more bounce ahead rather than bounce back. Caroline Macdonald of Oggadoon. I love that name, by the way. Oggadoon, thank you very much today for a very informative interview. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.